Hey everyone, welcome to this week's video at Visiting the Dutch Countryside. This week we will be talking about what you absolutely should do in Amsterdam and what attractions and things you can absolutely skip and miss out on, if you ask me. For the ones who are new here, my name is Manon and I am Dutch. I'm born and raised in the Netherlands, in the north of the Netherlands. And at Visiting the Dutch Countryside you will be discovering the Netherlands beyond the crowds with your favorite local. Which is me, in case you didn't know that, in case you were wondering. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe with the little notification bell so you won't miss any of my other upcoming videos. And let's head into the video. Okay, so the most famous park in the Netherlands and in Amsterdam has to be the Vondelpark. Basically, everyone that visits Amsterdam, almost everyone goes there. And I know it's a beautiful park, but it's not the only park in Amsterdam. By far it's not the only park. So I would recommend you to not go to the Vondelpark, but I would recommend you to go to the Oosterpark, Westerpark, Rembrandtpark, or even het Amsterdamse Bos. So that translates to the Amsterdam Forest, and it is found in the south of Amsterdam. It's basically in the part of Amstelveen, but people still call it the Amsterdamse Bos, but it's a beautiful region, it's a forest. So if you want to see nature and if you want to relax, then any other park than the Vondelpark is a good option in my opinion. The Vondelpark is also the most crowded, so yeah, I would recommend you to go to other parks, such as the ones that I mentioned. So it seems to be one of the most visited tourist attractions in Amsterdam is the Heineken brewery. Now, sure, Heineken is a famous brand and it's interesting to visit and to see how its beer is brewed and learn about the history and drink some beers, but Heineken beer is okay, but it's not the best Dutch beer that you can find. It's the most famous Dutch beer, that's for sure. But I would recommend to head to smaller breweries to do a tasting and to go on a brewery tour. You know, it's smaller, you will learn different things, and then by the end you can do a tasting of amazing Dutch craft beers. So instead of visiting the Heineken Brouwerij or the Heineken brewery, I would recommend you to head to places such as Brouwerij Troost or Brouwerij Het Ei or something like that. Brouwerij Het Ei is more known as well, but Brouwerij Troost, stuff like that, you know? It's just smaller and has a completely different atmosphere and vibe. So the Rijksmuseum, or Rijksmuseum in Dutch, is the most visited museum in the Netherlands. And it makes perfectly sense because you have amazing exhibitions, there's a beautiful library, and there are so many more things to discover and explore there in the museum. However, it is also generally very crowded, which is not something that I'm fond of, which you kind of should know by now. But yeah, so Amsterdam is actually home to so many museums, so many incredible smaller museums or less popular museums that are also so worth the visit. You've got the Van Loon Museum, you have the Hermitage. The Hermitage is generally quite popular as well, but not as popular as the Rijksmuseum or the Van Gogh Museum. You also have the Amsterdam Museum, the Grachtenmuseum or the Canals Museum. So that's essentially about the history of Amsterdam and its canals and stuff like that. And you have the Tropenmuseum. The Tropenmuseum is very near located to where I went to university, which is also why I used to get some lessons in a part of the Tropenmuseum, and it's beautiful by the way. But the museum itself is incredible. There are so many different exhibitions constantly, and it basically goes about so many cultures all across the world, and it dives into history and into perspectives that some already had and others not. So yeah, I think it's one of the best museums to visit in Amsterdam, but well, I'm me, but yeah. So yeah, there are tons of small museums. Also the Lord on the attic, what's it called? Yeah, or Dear Lord in the attic. Onze lieve Heer op zolder. It's better for me to pronounce it in Dutch. But yeah, that's also an incredible museum. It's a church that was one of those churches that people, when people weren't allowed to, to practice their religion, they went to that church. So yeah, there are so many more museums to explore, and I believe that it will be a shame if you've only visited one museum in the entire city of Amsterdam, because there's so much to see. So one thing that you might notice when you walk through Amsterdam is a lot of cheese shops, mainly around the area of Dam Square, the Kalverstraat, which is the most famous and popular city street, a shopping street in the Netherlands basically. But what you will see there is quite a lot of touristy shops. You see, the Council of Amsterdam, yeah, they kind of reacted really late when it comes to the push of touristy shops in the center of Amsterdam, which is also the reason why the center of Amsterdam, like the real epicenter basically, is awful. So there are so many touristy shops that it has removed locals from the area, and then it has removed local shops from the area, which is not something that you want if you're looking to experience Amsterdam. So there are quite a lot of cheese shops and stuff like that, and some of the cheese shops are actually good, but you will see an immense difference between the regular cheese shops from locals and the cheese shops that are just tourist shops. But yeah, I would recommend you not to go to the cheese shops. I would recommend you to go to tasting. And where can you go for a tasting? For cheese tasting in Amsterdam, you can go to Kef, for instance. It's one of the few places that you can do an actual cheese tasting, and it's really good. There's another thing. You know that so many people either go to the Kalverstraat to shop or to the 9 streets, 9 straatjes in Dutch. Both of them kind of meh, The 9 streets is way better than the Kalverstraat, but I believe that it's not as great as it used to be. So yeah, but it still has some amazing shops in there, way better than the Kalverstraat. You can find more local shops there, and yeah, also some nice cafes. So what I would recommend you to do is to visit the Haarlemmerdijk and the Haarlemmerstraat. And here you have tons and tons of little shops and local shops, and it's different. It has a different atmosphere than the 9 streets, obviously, because it's in a different part of the city. But still, it's really good to visit. So if you want to go shopping in Amsterdam, then I would recommend you to go there. Also because it's just different. I like different. Then of course, one of the highlights of Amsterdam, literally I guess, that is the Amsterdam Lookout Tower. So it's the tower where people can sit on a swing and fly over the edge. Good for you! Stay safe! I'm afraid of heights. Well, technically I'm afraid of falling to my death. So technically I'm afraid of dying. But yeah, so have fun, people. Anyway, so you have a beautiful view of Amsterdam there. But it's not free. And yes, it's the highest point in Amsterdam, but there are also free places to visit with an amazing view. And I'm a cheapskate, so if you want to save some money, you're welcome. So what I would recommend you to do is to visit the Nemo Museum. So Nemo is one of those really cool science museums. I loved going there when I was a kid. And you had those balls, and they put like the electricity wherever your hand would go. Anyway, they have all sorts of cool things. And one of the other cool things that I have is they have this incredible roof terrace, which is free to visit. So yeah, they also have a restaurant there. But just go on to the roof terrace and you have an amazing view. It's free. So there are quite a few people who are kind of searching for a more authentic experience to, you know, go out for a night or things like that. There are several places that I would recommend you to go to. So if you're looking to go for a drink or something in Amsterdam, then I would recommend you to skip out on the red light district, especially in the evening, because there are so many drunk tourists there that you do not even want to go. Honestly, tourists, people, think before you drink. Okay, cool. But yeah, I would recommend you to head to small little brown Dutch cafes. Those are the really, you know, you will find nowadays it's kind of a combination of all ages, but some are more where you can find older people and older than me. I mean, it's just really cozy. I guess that's, well, gezellig, but you don't have a translation for that in English, so cozy will have to do. So yeah, Dutch brown bars are really cozy and they just have this kind of atmosphere that I really like, and that just makes you feel at home. There are tons and tons and tons of Dutch brown cafes that you can visit in Amsterdam. So yeah, one of my favorites is Café Smalle, but there are plenty of other brown bars and cafes that you can visit, so definitely do so. Another thing that I would recommend you to skip in Amsterdam is to stop eating those darn Belgian waffles. They're not Dutch, why are you eating them? Go to Belgium for those. They're much better over there, honestly. You should come to Amsterdam or to the Netherlands to eat stroopwafels. Don't eat those darn Belgian waffles. They're not even Dutch. Why are you eating them? No, it's not something that, well, it's not something that's part of Dutch culture. So I'm always really surprised why I see so many waffle shops in Amsterdam, and then people are like, "Ah, I got an Amsterdam waffle," and I'm like, "You go what? Sure about that?" But anyway, so don't get a Belgian waffle. Go for those to, I don't know, Brussels, Antwerp, whatever. Instead, grab yourself a stroopwafel or head to the Febo and take, you know, a snack, a fried snack out of the vending machine, such as a croquette or frikandel, kaasvlee, anything that you want. Yeah, those kind of things, you know, do that. I would also recommend you to not head to the Amsterdam dungeon and not head to Madame Tussauds. You know, it's just, yeah. There are quite some places in Amsterdam that are, yeah, you know, they're alright, decent. Not something that I would recommend you to do if you're looking to really visit Amsterdam. Yeah? So instead head to the Film Museum, for instance, or to Micropia, where you can. It's basically about bacteria and small little things, but it's really cool. Okay, this one will be a bit controversial. Yeah, I have trouble with the word. Doesn't matter. Moving on. Okay, I would not recommend you to head on a canal tour. But that's only because I do not recommend you to go on a canal tour with those big boats, you know, that most people go in. Don't get me wrong, it still offers you a nice view of the canals, but I would recommend you to head with a smaller company, with a smaller boat, and then you can also actually head into places where those big canal boats cannot even enter and that cannot even go there, because they all have their routes that they need to follow. Also, when you know, go with a smaller company, smaller boat, it gives you a different perspective. They have more time for you to answer your questions. They go deeper into things that you want to know. It just gives you a completely different experience and a better one. So the most famous market in Amsterdam is basically the Albert Kuipmarkt, and this market can be found in the Pijp region, the neighborhood of the Pijp. But it's so crowded. I mean, there are tons of things to buy and to see, but there are also a lot of tourists, which is okay for some and not okay for others, I would recommend you to head to the Doppermarkt or the Tenkatenmarkt instead. Here you can also find tons of local products and not much people compared to the Allerskijkmarkt, of course, because it's still a market in Amsterdam, so there will be people, but yeah, not as much. Okay, another thing that I would say skip in Amsterdam is to ride a bike. If you've never cycled before. Also if you're not a good cyclist. Because everyone I know, or everyone that's visiting Amsterdam, they're all like, oh my god, you need to ride a bike in Amsterdam. Cool. Okay, so ride a bike in Amsterdam. If you know the rules, if you know how to bike. And even for Dutch people that are not from Amsterdam, the city of Amsterdam is really overwhelming when it comes to cycling. So, and we've been cycling since that we were, what, like 4 years old? So I have this video on cycling here in the Netherlands, but still, do not think that you're a great cyclist if you've never cycled in the Netherlands before, because you're probably not. There are so many little rules that you need to keep in mind. There are so many, you know, things in your surroundings that you need to keep in mind. There are pedestrian scooters, there are trams, tram rails that you need to cross vertically, because otherwise you will fall as your wheel will, you know, go into the tram rails, which would be very inconvenient when there's a tram coming. Also, you've got buses, you've got cars, you've got other cyclists, there are tons of things. So it's very overwhelming, and it's also very annoying for people in Amsterdam when there are so many tourists cycling that do not know how to cycle, and that actually leads and has led to so many dangerous situations. So be safe, be careful, think before you act. Do not stop in a cycle path all of a sudden. People will crash into you, it's dangerous, you know, tons of things. Just do not think you're a great cyclist if you've never cycled here before. So yeah, what I would recommend you to do instead is to walk. Amsterdam is not a big city, so it's very easy to walk everywhere. If you are tired, well, then you can take the public transport. Public transportation in Amsterdam is really good and really convenient. It runs all the time, so except for middle of the night. But then you've got the night buses. So yeah, it's really good. And you can also go on a walking tour. On a free walking tour that I've created for you. Yeah, I've created a free walking tour for you through Amsterdam, which you can check out below. But yeah, I would recommend you to do that, and then you will visit places that you otherwise won't visit. And yes, it will take a little bit longer, but you can fill an entire day with that. And it's really cool. So another thing that you should not do, or what to skip, is basically high season, because July and August are high season in the Netherlands, and oh boy, it's expensive. Things get 5 times more as expensive, and with things I mean accommodation gets so expensive, it's insane. It's actually bizarre that it's actually, I say a lot of actually now, but that it's actually allowed to increase the price that much. It's bizarre. So the last tip is not really a skip thing or something like that, but it's more, do not forget that there's an entire country waiting for you outside of Amsterdam. There are tons and tons of places to visit, and the Netherlands is really small, so you're everywhere within a finger snap, basically. It's ridiculous. You're in 15 minutes to Haarlem, you're in 40 minutes to Alkmaar, you're in 40 minutes or an hour to Enkhuizen, you're in an hour to Zwolle, you're in 1.5 hours to Arnhem or Nijmegen, you're in an hour to Rotterdam, you're within 20 minutes, 25 minutes you're at Utrecht. You know, the possibilities are endless. Amersfoort is around the corner. There are tons of possibilities, so please, please, please do not forget that there is so much to see outside of Amsterdam. So yeah, guys, that was it for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something. So yeah, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe with the little notification bell, as always. And I will see you next week. Toodaloo! Bye! Doei!